Hi, this is Shane Starr on my day off, not always in a tie. And I have 3 episodes to go to finish my series on the 48 laws of power and the cognitive functions. Today we're going to do introverted intuition, tomorrow the 2 feeling functions, and then I'll start the week fresh and see what happens then. So when we think of power, again, as I've said in the other videos, we normally think of success, and success comes in 2 main realms, either social life or at work. And sometimes there's a gray area where those 2 things sort of mix and come together. But in our series, the laws we look at are obviously applicable to both. So we're going to look at introverted intuition today, and we're going to see what 4 laws I picked from the book, and we'll see what you think when you hear the video. So when we think of introverted intuition, we normally don't think of power that much. We associate power, especially in socionic circles, we associate power with SE. In MBTI circles, we would probably associate power with more or less with TE. But all the functions have their own role to play. And introverted intuition has its own. So let's get into it. All right, the first law that I have applicable to introverted intuition, and when we think of this, think of the knowledge of time, the big picture, where this is going in the long run, maybe the opposite of right here, right now, right? So first law is law number 16. And any of the introverted functions can do this, but I find that NI users do this most strategically, and that is using absence to increase respect and honor. Too much circulation makes the price go down. The more you are seen and heard from, the more common you appear. If you're already established in a group, temporary withdrawal from it will make you more talked about and even more admired. You must learn when to leave. Create value through scarcity. And although, again, any of the introverted functions are capable of this, I think lead NI users are best. It's that wise person, the counselor type of person, the sort of individual achiever that doesn't talk a lot. And when they're gone, you feel their absence. And it's always like, where's so-and-so, what are they doing? We need them here. And, the NE person, by contrast, is the one who's always there and benefiting from whatever work the other parts of the group are doing. But to be fair, on their side, they're usually the ones who are at the forefront of creating whatever activity or project a group might be working on. But lead NI users use absence. They do this in personal relationships, dating, and at work. It's like, oh, I would love to help you with that, but I'm over here this week. I'm too busy to do that. It's like, oh, we really need you over here, They're excellent at not overspending themselves, and I think all of the extroverted cognitive functions can overextend themselves and spread themselves too thin. NI users are usually really focused on one solid thing, and when they do that, they're absent from other activities where those around them see that they are needed. And that's a good thing. The scarcer something is, the higher its value is. Okay, moving on. Let's look at Law 21. All right. Um, this is a debatable one, but I'm going with it. Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark. No one likes feeling stupider than the next person. The trick then is to make your victims feel smart, and not just smart, but smarter than you are. Once convinced of this, they'll never suspect you may have ulterior motives. Now, again, a lot of people can have their own ideas on which functions do this the best. In my mind, NI users are excellent at this. And how do they do that? This magic thing called listening. I think NI users have the best ability, lead NI users are great listeners. You can have a half-hour long conversation with them and they'll know your whole life story, and you'll walk away enjoying the conversation but knowing virtually nothing about them. I have a couple of NI lead friends who know way more about me and my life than I know about theirs, and there's nothing good or bad about that. I'm just saying, when it comes to strategically getting power, either in social matters, having group secrets, being the one that everyone wants to talk to privately, thus the counselor stereotype of the INFJs, INFPs in socionics, or even the INTJs. They listen much more than they seem to be. I can't tell you how many times I've known an INTJ who knew the whole backstory to something I thought they were either oblivious to or absent from. And it's like, how did you know that? It's like, oh, I hear things. And it's like, okay, give me one of those secret microphones under your desk so I could hear things too, right? But yeah, when it comes to strategic power, the person who's listening in the moment seems maybe less impressive, less smart, but they're gathering knowledge and they strategically use that to gain power and increase their freedom, free agency, and their mobility moving upwards in either a social group or a company. So again, I think, on the face of it, this looks like an FE thing, but it's not really. FEs would impress people in other ways. By listening, NI users seem less smart to a lot of people because they're not pontificating as much. But they can do that, no doubt. But underneath the surface, they're accumulating important knowledge and learning how to use that to their advantage. Okay, next up, Law 29. Let's see where we are at. And this one will be the most obvious of the whole bunch. Law 29, plan all the way to the end. The ending is everything. Plan all the way to it, taking into account all possible consequences, obstacles, and twists of fortune that might reverse your hard work and give the glory to others. By planning to the end, you will not be overwhelmed by circumstances and you will know when to stop. Gently guide fortune and help determine the future by thinking far ahead. This is where I have run into a lot of trouble throughout my life, all the way back to high school and navigating my personal relationships, my surfing career, my college experience, and my first profession, which was teaching. I did things and a little bit worked, so figure if a little works, more is better. And even though if someone would have sat me down, I could have logically saw where this is going, and I never did. It's always like the future doesn't exist. I'll meet the future when I get it, not realizing that your present self is putting you in a really bad position for the future. And most of the worst things that have happened in my life, if I really analyze them, had it not been that thing, something else would have came up. So it wasn't this moment or that moment. It was a whole strategic step towards something wrong that could have been avoided by living a different way of life. I think lead NI users are excellent at not falling into that trap. They plan all the way to the end. They count the costs before they start. They know if they'll have enough money to finish a project. They'll know if they have enough time to finish a project. They'll see people for who they really are and not who we wish them to be. And they steer clear of bad influences that sometimes catch the rest of us unaware, or aware but non-caring. And when it comes to work, they're really good at avoiding traps that would catch most people slipping. And, whether it's something unethical or even something that's benign as far as good or bad goes, right or wrong, they still know how to avoid bad decisions. I could tell you lots of stories, including some of my own, where we left one job for another, or one position within a company for another, thinking we're trading up, when in fact we realized we were trading down. NI users tend to not do that. If you're an NI user making a comfortable 6 figures a year and someone comes along to you with a great idea, job switch to raise your salary by, say, 40%, and most of us would, maybe with some caution, we would end up taking it. Some of us would jump at it. The NI user can see down the road and think, that's a startup. Maybe that'd be good for about 6 months, but then where are we going to go after that? What are we going to do when the market stabilizes and then you have to start cutting costs and now I'm out of a job? They're really good at seeing it ahead to the end game. And that perhaps planning all the way to the end is the single greatest aspect or characteristic of lead NI people. Okay, next and last up is Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for in victory. Learn when to stop. Sort of similar to the last law, right? The moment of victory is often the moment of greatest peril. In the heat of victory, arrogance and overconfidence can push you past the goal you had aimed for, and by going too far, you make more enemies than you defeat. Do not allow success to go to your head. There's no substitute for strategy and careful planning. Set a goal, and when you reach it, stop. Again, it rides on the theme of the last one about planning all the way to the end. Planning all the way to the end is, like Law 47 says, knowing when to stop. And again and again and again, things like in surfing, pulling off a great move on a wave that sealed the victory, and then instead of just letting it go, I do another one and then fall on the second one. And then it ruins it and then I don't win, that kind of thing. In business, you take a strategy and it's like buying stocks and the stock keeps rising. It's going to drop, but you can't help yourself. You buy that one more, and then you get caught like musical chairs and you're the one without a seat and it all falls down. I've done that with money, like spending and not knowing when to stop. Having enough and then getting one more, and then, whether it's being short for, a bill or some other purchase I needed, or, whether it's in a social group, it can be little things like teasing people, not knowing when to stop. NI users are very good at maximizing their gains before they reach the point of diminishing returns. So like a less spectacular example would simply be maximizing their energy such that they're not putting in more than they're getting out. So when you have a goal and you achieve that goal, stop, collect yourself, celebrate. Don't keep going, oh, well, I got this, let's do more, and a lot of things, not to get religious on anyone, but like in sins, you have little tiny, in Catholicism we call them venial sins. They're not sins that are going to send you to hell, but they're kind of bad things. And it's like, oh, I did that, it felt good, I'll do a little more of this, I'll say a little more of that. It's not hurting anyone, and then before you know it, the steps down to a really bad place happen one little bit at a time, and before you know it, it's like, how did I get here? Like, it all started with just one drink, and now here I am, homeless or jobless or whatever it is, that kind of thing. So we could all take a page out of the Lead NI book and plan all the way to the end. In victory, learn when to stop. And I think that that really summarizes NI and its role in the 48 Laws of Power. That's all I have for today. Tomorrow, FE and FI. Peace out.